Welcome back everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about a project that I did for a friend that is currently speedrunning Super Metroid. For those that don't know what speedrunning is, basically it's trying to complete a game as fast as possible, and of course, faster than other people. He streams this on Twitch, maybe you've seen it in a previous video of mine running in the background. He uses a program called Live Split. This allows him to keep times and reset and split. I don't really know what it completely does, but I know that he's using a controller right now to check these times and reset things when he needed to. So he asked me if something that could be controlled by foot would be easy to make. And I said, yeah, let's do it. Electronic-wise, this project's fairly easy. At first I was going to use an @tiny85 and try to put some code on it, but then USB would have been a bit of a problem. So I decided on the Digispark, programmed with the Arduino IDE. The Digispark's bootloader, micronucleus, allows for USB communications after it's been flashed. So this is perfect for USB HID. My code is only 40 lines and uses the Trinket keyboard library. The Digispark is able to handle 4 digital inputs and still allow USB to work. I did have to set the fuse on pin 6, that's P5, as well, just like I mentioned in another previous video. The buttons are some simple single-pole momentary switches that I ordered from China. The inputs on the microcontroller are going to be pulled high using 10K resistors. When the button's pressed, they go low, and the controller performs whatever action that I program. Now moving on to the pedal, the stand, the case, whatever you want to call it. I enlisted the help of a friend who does a lot more woodworking than I do and also has a lot more tools than I do. So I packed up my camera and headed out to his garage where we got to work. We had a basic design in our minds that we hashed out over a few weeks, but nothing really solid. We wanted it sloped, which would give easier access to the buttons. We also wanted it about 16 inches wide to give enough space for the buttons and maybe like a small footrest. We picked sort of a T-shape for the buttons instead of a single row. It gave more space and only 3 buttons will really be used often. The buttons are 16mm, but the wood was actually too thick to properly attach the buttons. I didn't realize this until we fully assembled the box. Oh well, that's what hot glue's for. After a lot of nailing, gluing, and sanding, it was stained a nice dark cherry, and sanded again. I think the finish came out fantastic. So back to my house, it's time to assemble the electronic parts. So here's the prototype of the build. It's just on some small breadboards, just for testing. They work perfectly, so it was time to move on to the final build. I opted for some cheap perf board to put the 10K resistors on and the wiring. And it also looks like I can mount the Digispark right to it. This was my futile attempt at trying to keep things neat. You'll probably notice that all my wire is red. This serves no purpose except for the fact that I ran it up black. Next was wiring the buttons. Soldering on the wires is pretty straightforward. One side was ground, the other side was the input of the Digispark with the 10K resistor. I also had to make sure that I fed the wires through the pedal board thingy first. So this is where I came up with the idea to mount the microcontroller to the perf board itself. Cuts down on some of the wires, and I'm just using the header pins that came with the Digispark. Back to connecting each button to the controller and the perf board. Once all that was done, you can see the rat's nest that I created. I probably should have routed the wires a little better, but nobody's going to see the underside of this. So it's time to flash the firmware into the Digispark. It was pretty painless, but I did run into one issue. The button connected to pin 2 kept repeating its input. After checking the code in the circuit, I determined everything was how it should have been. But I did notice that pin 2 has an LED connected to it on the Digispark. This is nice for some testing like a blink circuit, but when trying to pull up an input, the LED would turn on and draw current and cause the voltage to drop. So it would go down to about 2 volts, and this would cause the input to be read as a low and trigger the Digispark to issue the command that I set. So my fix was simply just to desolder the LED, and the input was now reporting as being pulled high and low when the button was pressed. After I confirmed everything was working perfectly, it was time to glue some things down. So I glued the perf board down to the wood, and I filed a spot here for the micro USB cable to come out. I then put a dab of hot glue on each button to hold them down. They fit fairly well into the hole, so there's little or no risk of them coming out anyway. Assembly is complete, so let's jump over to Volrat to see what he thinks.
Alright, so here's what the board looks like. So like I said, there are 4 buttons on the board. So I'll go ahead and restart the timer so you can see the timer is still going on at the bottom there, as you can see. So if I do that, it'll reset again. So what I do to start the timer, I just hit this beautiful button right here, so the timer just starts. So whenever I get the item, I already got the item earlier, so whenever I got the item, I split. So it shows me however much time I saved, and I can keep going with the game. In this case, which I made a pretty big mistake because I got the item 3 minutes in advance for some reason, which is impossible like I said earlier. So if I can either undo, and this one is skip. Sorry, like I said, this is my first time using it. So I can skip splits. I can undo splits, which is the button that I'll use less often. So this is why I put it on top. I can go back, keep going forward with this one. And I can reset it again. And the reason why I'm touching my PC when I do this is because it's asking me to save my best splits. So that's pretty much it. I hope I'm pretty happy that my buddy Unusual Trailer / Project Geek make this for me. It warms my heart for somebody to make something as awesome as this in order to support me for my streams. I really thank him for that.
Well, that does it for this video. I want to thank everybody for watching this video and all my other videos. I've now reached over 100 subscribers and I have nobody to thank except you guys.